ready this morning? Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to January 28th, 2023 Annual Congregational Meeting as outlined our bylaws and Constitution. Call this meeting to order and establish a quorum, which is now 10% of our voting members. We have approximately 153, so we're well above that number. So let it be noted that we have a quorum today. We'll open this morning with Pastor's address.
I'm going to start with a reading from Scripture in Exodus chapter 3. It says this in verse 1. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock to the west side of the wilderness, and he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near, take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Further on in verse 13, Moses says to God, If I come to the people in Israel and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, What is his name? What shall I say? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, Say to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. So the story of Moses in the burning bush, I chose that for the beginning address here for a very specific reason, because in that burning bush story, Moses gets told by God, I'm going to send you to Pharaoh in Egypt to free my people. But Moses was not in Egypt right then, because he had fled from Egypt, because he had murdered a guy in Egypt, and he was on the run, and he was a wanted man. God's saying, I'm going to send you back to where you're a wanted man, where you could be killed, and I'm going to ask you to go to Pharaoh, whose house you grew up in, and tell him to let all the people go. And God continues to tell him, Pharaoh won't do it. He won't listen to you until he gets persuaded by a mighty hand, which God was talking about his own hand. And then Moses tries to come up with an excuse. He says, well, if I go and I say this, that God, they're not going to believe me. Who should I say sent me? And God says, I am who I am. You tell them my name is I am. Every objection that Moses tried to give, God said, trust me. Do what I'm telling you to do. That led to a long time of Moses pleading for the people to go and plagues hitting plagues hitting Egypt. Moses pleading and plagues hitting. Moses pleading and plagues hitting. And then finally, when they were allowed to go, when God got them out through the final plague and the Passover, they had to cross through the Red Sea, and they spent 40 years wandering around in the wilderness before they got to the promised land. And people were grumbling the whole way. Do you ever think that Moses went, I should have never gone over to check that burning bush? Because I love the way it says it. He saw this, the angel of God came to him in a flame of fire from a bush, but the bush was not consumed, and Moses goes, I'm going to go look at why that bush isn't burning up. And when God saw that he had turned aside, God spoke to him. You ever think Moses just went, I should have just kept my eyes over here. Let that bush do its thing. The reason I'm bringing this up is because when we turn aside to see the things that God is doing, sometimes he leads us in places that are uncomfortable for us in order to show his grace and his mercy. A year and a half ago, y'all called me here to be pastor. I warned you. God speaks to us and He asks us to trust Him and listen to Him and not always do things the way. And I'm afraid that at some point here, maybe in the very near future, you're going to go, I wish we hadn't looked at that bush. I wish we hadn't, what were we thinking? Because as I said, I'm a weird guy. But I'm only weird because God's weird. I'm only weird because I do trust that God still speaks to us in miraculous, fire-bound ways and says, trust me, I'm going to ask you to do some crazy stuff. And it's not going to seem like it's going to work, but I'll make it work. And I think that's where God has put us as a church. I like being here. And I feel like y'all like me because we just enjoy each other. And I feel like it would be real easy for us to sit in here and just enjoy us liking each other. But that's not what God's called us for. God has called us to be more than just this. God has called us to respond to what He's putting in our path from everywhere else. The demographic projections for Medina County are not astounding. We've grown over the last year less than 1% population growth. Over the past 10 years, it's been an average of about 1.3% population growth. And you might say, well, it seems a lot bigger than that. Right? Yeah. Because we see the groundwork for what is actually getting ready to happen. And what we also know about the demographic of Medina County is the age is a little bit higher than a lot of the other counties. And there's a lot of generational land and things that is no longer going to be lying in the hands of the generations that have been here. And pretty soon, those demographers who haven't looked at all that are going to realize, whoa, this place is blowing up because that land's getting sold off. And their projections of us growing maybe at a rate of 25% in the next 50 years, I think it's going to be more like 60. And we can lament that, or we can go, praise Jesus, more souls. But if that's the kind of growth that we're going to have around here, that's the kind of growth that's going to be here. And look at this church. What are we going to do? And so today is about looking at what's going to happen over the next year and what our projections and plans are and so forth. And that's good. We should do that. But I don't like to stop there because 1 year goes by quick. Anybody get to New Year's Day this year and go, wow, that went quick? 1 year goes by quick. And so what we need to start doing is looking at what happens to us in the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. What are we preparing ourselves for? Rather than being a reactionary group, how are we preparing ourselves for God putting stuff in our path? I don't have the answer. But I believe that God puts the answer among us and that He calls us to be those who are going to steward His kingdom and His gifts well. You remember the story of the talents? The master gives 5 talents to one, 3 to another, and 1 to another. And the one with 1 went, oh my goodness, this is really valuable. I'm going to bury it so I don't lose it. And the master comes back and says, you wicked and slothful servant. What I get out of that, and here's where y'all might start wondering about me, is that God, when He comes back, when the master comes back, He's not going to be impressed that we have a big bank account, that we saved it. He lauds the ones who risked it all for His kingdom. And His kingdom's coming to us in the form of souls that are coming from all over the place. And how are we going to reach those souls? And so I'm putting all of this out here for 2 reasons. One, this is your chance to say, we made a mistake, let's get rid of this guy. Okay, we do that today. Or we can say, you know what? That's what God's calling us to do. This year, I would like to develop a long-range planning team. And I'd like to ask for some of y'all to be a part of that. To sit down together as a team multiple times, and I'd like to, before this year is over, preferably before the fourth quarter of this year, to be able to sit down and say, as a long-range planning team, this is what we anticipate, and this is how we feel God is maybe moving us to act proactively, to welcome those who aren't here yet. To become a place for those people to land. For this church to grow, yes. But not just in numbers, for this church to grow spiritually with the talents, the gifts, and the wherewithal that God has given us. It's also going to call us to hold lightly to maybe some of those things that we held strongly to in the past. I don't know what it means for this church to grow and this sanctuary to not be enough. Does that mean we build another building? Does that mean we move some stuff around in here? What does it mean? What does it look like for the future? And so if you think, you know what, I'd like to be a part of, I'd like to sit in on that, come see me. Because I'm going to put this team together. And we're going to start meeting in the next month and a half on a regular basis. And if nobody signed up, then that's just me meeting, and you don't want that. So I'm asking you to think about it, give some prayer. It's to put our heads and our hearts together and say, what is God leading us toward in this new year, in this new season, this new decade, this new century that He's given us? Pray with me. Lord, bless this time that we have together in your name. We ask that you would bless those who you're putting it on their heart to be a part of seeking for your will and your desires. I'm praying, Lord, already for those souls of the people who aren't here yet. That you're starting to prepare them now for the time that they're going to be here. That you're preparing us now for those souls that are going to get here. And you're making us ready to love them, to care for them. That you will make us less livid about the growth around here and more anxious for your kingdom. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.
And that brings us out of the agenda. All right, thank you, Pastor. Next is the minutes of the 2023 meeting. Are there any comments or changes on those minutes before they're accepted as final? Seeing none, they're accepted as written. Next is our committee and organizational reports. You've got your big submittal here with everything in it. The first 2 pages are the minutes. Following that is the President's report. It's been a great year. Highlights, of course, include the St. John's Cemetery entrance gate. And due to a generous donation, getting this rampart done in that. So there's several projects we hope to do going forward. Again, for planning for the growth of this organization. We're super excited. The LCMC involvement gets greater and greater every year. We're fortunate that those events are closer to us, and so that allows us to attend those annual events and participate. And we're just super happy with their support and they with ours. New things this year. It does touch the budget a little bit. As you'll notice, we did the deputy outside starting in August. That's additional cost that we didn't have before, but appears to be well received. And particularly relative to its impact on the sausage supper, it was a lot more organized and the traffic control improvements we had, just a lot better flow than we had in the past. So, other notable events with electronic tithing, for those that use that, and use that thing, and hopefully others are willing to use it as we go forward. We now have a church webpage. It's something we had for a while. People often ask, how do you reach us in the digital world? Because they're not a Facebook person. And so that's been done thanks to the efforts of congregation members. So many thanks for everybody that contributed in so many ways to the mission of the church this year. And with that concludes my presence report. Treasurers and attendance report. Next page. We began in general fund with $138,000, closing with $146,000. Stayed in the maintenance fund because we put some into the certificate deposit. We went from 113 to really about 160. Youth fund didn't change significantly. Billing fund, small changes. Really excited about the attendance this year. We're averaging well over 50 per service, so that's something that very few Lutheran congregations as a whole can look forward to. So we look forward to sustaining that and growing that as we go forward. Any questions on the treasurer's report? I know that's a lot of stuff that goes on. We'll try to give that to you in all the bulletins in its full detail. The bottom line is we're doing well. We'll talk about the budget here shortly in detail on where those funds have gone and where we intend them to go in the future. Anything further on the treasurer's report? Any questions? Okay. On the property maintenance. Again, super excited to have the ramp work done. Thank you for everybody that contributed to that. It was definitely a group effort. A lot of brains went into that, and most of all, thankful for the contribution that led to instigating that and getting that done. So just super happy to do that. I think that's encouraged us to do more in the coming future. We'll talk about a resolution to follow, not just some follow-up projects. The rest is much small stuff. So, any questions on the property maintenance report? Okay, we move the church. I'll give a report in here. Another great year, doing everything they do. Please go with their report and their treasurer's report contained herein. Any questions, comments? Okay, moving on to the pastoral and church secretary report. Highlights include 14 new members for the year. It's been a while since we didn't see the number that high. We recognize the passing of Ruth and Shirley during the year. 3 marriages, so for the marvelous things to see. Jordan and Judy, Jesse and Cheyenne, and Neil and Renee. So really blessed about all that. First communion, of course, we have 2, Lisa and Brent. And as mentioned previously, we've got 153 members at present. Any questions on that portion? Straightforward, all good news. Educational report. Latest thing is the 2-class concept, allow the older and younger to kind of go with their own flow. So thank you for the many volunteers that we've had that to make that possible. It really does require that level of support to carry forward. So please continue if you can as a volunteer, and there's always room for others should you feel moved to participate in that. As always, the highlight were VBS in the summer, Sunday School Rally Talent Show on the 24th, and the ever popular Christmas program with the kids December 17th. So thank you, Farrah. Thank you for the team that made all that happen. Another successful year. Budget. lot to digest, so kind of a nutshell version of it is we did spend a lot more money than we anticipated. Primarily 3 expenditures are there, and that was the ramp work project itself, which was an unbudgeted expense. The security team that we now have, so there's an expense with that every Sunday, and then the web page. So those 3 things, for the most part, made up the difference from our projected budget of $128,000 to our actual expenditures of $146,000. Going forward, we're anticipating a budget of $151,000 plus, and just to try to pick out a few highlights. Everything's going up, so there's kind of a measured difference in things like supplies and equipment and that sort of stuff. Insurance is going up a lot. That one is one that's a surprise, but yet not a surprise. So you'll see those costs. We'll see the full impact of our security every Sunday impacting the budget. And for the new year, we have 2 major projects planned. One is another level, another concrete effort. Start back here as part of that effort. We'd like to move around to the front of the church and really improve that. It's gotten rough out there. We really don't have a very good parking situation for our handicap spots and that sort of stuff. So we'll be talking here shortly about the resolution that will ask authorization and congregation for the council to go forward and do not only that effort as hard concrete, but also some work here in the sanctuary relative to getting the internet in place, changing the cameras, restoring our ability to show video from here over to the fellowship hall for overflow, and to kind of tinker our sound system. Thanks to the many, they have worked hard to keep this system going, but we're coming on its last legs, and so there's going to be a concerted effort in the new year to make some improvements. That's probably it in a nutshell relative to the budget itself. Any questions or comments on the detailed budget itself? I'll talk a little more about the resolutions to follow.
I got something to think about. I mean, I know the concrete work and all that you already do is great. One other thing we need to look at is the parking across the road out here. I don't know if so much gravel is under there, or it just needs regrading or what, but the people that have to park on the other side of the road, we can't all park back there in the back.
It's greasy.
It gets muddy out there when it rains, and you track it in the vehicle, you track it in the sanctuary and all that. And also, I think I'm not asking for payment or even thinking about that, but I think we add a little gravel or something to it, and we can work on it for it to look at better condition. And also, there's something to think about is the paving around.
Right.
Paving around.
Well, and that's a good segue or addition to what Pastor was talking about, of planning our future. You know, it's kind of fairly easy to work the ramp. You know, this sanctuary itself probably isn't going to change in the long term. You know, so something like that, handicap access and safety to the front and the back, are kind of no-brainer. But beyond that, I think that's where this team figuring out how this site is going to work going forward. We need change. We need to change the parking. We need to set aside space for a future sanctuary. We need to replace our shelters. We need to change the traffic flow. All things we probably need to look at before we spend a lot more money in concrete and gravel and that sort of stuff. So I think that was particular for us, that going beyond the immediate 2 projects, making sure we don't spend money on something that we would ultimately undo in 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years. And so that's definitely something we need to look at, is how the parking fits into our overall plan. Again, if you have an interest in that, the more the merrier on that group that will kind of figure out that going forward. Granted, it wouldn't cost us much to throw a little gravel out, but I think we're going to look at a higher level in the coming year and figure out how this should be configured, and how the infrastructure will support the growth that we're anticipating. So, good inputs. Anybody else? And again, council's always there. We always have opportunity for someone to talk before the meeting starts. So if you don't want to speak here and you want to come into the next council, by all means, come chat with us. Let us know your ideas. And then as these committees are formed, by all means, our pastor and future council know that you're willing to participate in those activities. Anyone else on the budget? All right, let me go forward to the resolutions. For those that may not be as familiar with how we're functioning, with the new constitution that was formed 2 years now, for almost 3 years, council can expend up to $5,000 without going back to the congregation. And so every year prior to this meeting, we kind of go back and say, what are our needs going to be for the future? And that's what we came up with these two needs for the resolution supporting council efforts to execute these activities. The first is concrete wood. We're super happy. We've gone through the design work to kind of get the rhythm of it, kind of have some idea how this is going to work out. So I think that's moved us to say, let's go ahead and finish at least this immediate sanctuary area by getting the ramp work and parking done immediately to the front of the church. There's a little graphic in here. It's just to kind of give a real basic intent of how it might look. If you have an interest in helping you find how that might look, there'll be a group that will start up here and work on the design and layout of that. So anybody is welcome to participate, and then I'll just let council, the pastor know, and we get you into that committee. So with that is a notional budget of $20,000 for, again, a very similar project, leading into what we have and fixing the front ramp and access issues we have at that point. Second resolution, as I touched on before, is the work of sound and video systems in here. $12,000 is probably way beyond what we're going to spend. We might be able to get down to almost half that. There's some fine minds working on that right now. I'd rather confine ourselves and have to come back again a month or two later. We've asking for congregational authorization as council to spend up to $12,000 to rather than patch, fix the sound systems, and ultimately fix the video issue between here, basically all the over the internet. And then also new, some people are aware, some aren't, we are trying to reach out through Facebook Live, present these services for those that can't make it. Hopefully stumble in some people that don't know who we are, that would like to check out our service. And right now it's been difficult due to how our systems are structured, our internet is available but not available, our cameras work, all that stuff. So the intent here is to fix all those things in one fell swoop with a professional system that will serve us for a considerable period of time. So those are the two resolutions.
Kevin, I've got a question about
Yeah.
the second one. Is that just here in the church? Is that, also, I know we have an exterior speaker outside, is that, what is that, just in here with the video, or is that also other items on the campus?
That's a good point. We were successful last fall getting that working really well. So I'm not saying that it couldn't touch on that if there's funding left.
Well, I don't know what the
How I worded it.
service life is.
Is it broad enough?
Yeah, I think most of the discussion has kind of led to, the system is pretty much integrated all together. And so whatever parts of it need to be worked on to make it function as an integrated system, both here on campus and be able to also send the, send the streaming out. If any of y'all have gone and tried to watch the streaming stuff online, Get what? Can't get anything out of it. So to be able to, again, look towards what, so I think it would, it's hard to say it's gonna start here and end here. It will probably incorporate campus, whatever.
How do we get internet?
Right now, we do it through Rock Solid to the education building. We have a hard line from there to the fellowship hall, another hard line from there to the parsonage. The hard line between here and the fellowship hall for video is broken. So that's where we really started all this stuff, in addition to the other issues we've had over the year. So the thing was, is you go ahead and do it like we did years ago, and try to hardline all this stuff, or go ahead and fix the problems with the internet here, but that also ties in with our security systems, with our ability to broadcast outside, with the ability to send sound and video from here over to there, all that ties together. So I think in answering your question, that would have to be an integral part of it as a whole, because again, one of the main reasons for doing this was the fact that we couldn't transmit from here to there. And so we'll fix what's necessary there to ensure that we've got overflow capacity for special events, and we can. We're hopeful for growth. There'll be other, hopefully more and more opportunities where we'll need that extra seating capacity. And for a while, we usually, of course, for those that didn't feel comfortable in large groups, if we go over there, we kind of stop doing that. But we definitely want the fellowship hall as a resource where it expands on the sanctuary until the point where we build a new sanctuary. Definitely a great overflow resource that we want to continue to use, and this system will allow us to do it.
I have a follow-up to that on the sound system for the fellowship hall, and that we have funerals that we need to broadcast. Is it council's decision upon but we've got $26,000 in the memorial fund, which comes from people that have passed away in recognition of them, that we could use some of that for making sure we have the sound system in the fellowship hall.
Most certainly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited what that can do. Right now, the system we broadcast on TV, but then we ask the question, well, does it need to broadcast also into the sound system over here? Something to think about, yeah.
Kevin, are you looking at a wireless system, or are you looking about trying to redo the hardwire system?
Wireless.
Wireless.
With the internet, we'll be able to just go buy all that.
Right.
Yeah, because it's just, running hardwire is hard but easy. Anything goes wrong, then you're screwed. And we're kind of at that point right now. We've lost that hard line. And going forward with a robust internet backbone, we'll be able to interact with the outside world and interact between the buildings in far more successful ways. And there's a lot of technology there, and that goes beyond my training.
Can I dovetail on Connie's question, because I think you were asking about the memorial fund. Is there a special permission that's needed in order for that specific pot of funds to be used for something like that? In other words, is the question need to be asked a different way today in order to free that up for use?
I don't think it changes the resolution per se, because we don't say where the money's coming from. We've always looked for things that are memorial worthy, if that makes sense. They're not regular operational type things. So generally, it's the holders of the memorial fund and the council that kind of goes out, no, this is definitely something that we can spend some money on. Allocate to that purpose, so. Okay, any further discussions on any of those two resolutions? Again, if you have any interest, please get involved going forward. We appreciate the help. Particularly if you have any knowledge in those areas of expertise, so. We need no further discussion, then let me move forward with the vote, or ask for a motion to vote on resolution 1?
I'll go make a motion, so resolution 1 after.
Okay, we have the first, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, any further discussion? Moving forward with the voice vote on PLC resolution number 1 for continued concrete work, discretion of council, at a cost not to exceed $20,000. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. It appears unanimous, the motion carries. Second resolution is funding to work on the sound, which in turn, and video systems in turn also impacts our internet and our capabilities in both the sanctuary and the fellowship hall as a complete system. Not to exceed $12,000. Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay.
Jared.
Jared and. All right, having first and second, is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much, and the continuing council, new council will do their best to keep you informed. And again, if you have specific interest in either one of those activities, please join us in the planning of those. New business? You know, that's a good point. Probably should, let's see, how did we do it last time? No, last year we did the budget with the congregation, but. Yeah, we probably ought to do it officially. So back to the budget. Is there any further discussion on the budget? We have a motion to adopt.
I move we adopt it as proposed.
Okay, we have a first, we have a second? All right. Any further discussion on the budget? Okay, all those in favor of approving the budget as presented and printed in this package, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, budget is approved. New business, service gifts. Most of you know, but I'll go over this for the new folks. There's contracted positions where we pay a salary, and then there's others where they're volunteers. And they put a lot of their time and effort into providing us with the service, and so we always take this opportunity to give thanks and modest gift to recognize and thank them for their efforts for the year. So I have a number of them here. We'll start with the music department. And since Sherry's sitting here staring at me, I'll thank you first. Appreciate it. Thank you, Connie. Debbie's been kind of a new face to the team. Gladys, of course, as the organist emeritus, continue to kill. We have one here, and I guess I'll leave that with you. Next, we have our education department. And so we have a number of volunteers that participated this year and made this two-class effort successful. The teachers are happier, the kids are happier. Hopefully we'll be able to continue that such way. And for first, leader of the team, Farah. And Kathy Schnitzer. Renee Schneider.
I'm up here.
Ah, okay. We'll get you fixed up. Mary Weems, thank you for everything you've done on that. And finally, Elaine for doing all the paperwork and magic she does on printing and programming. Yeah, it's a vastly better system. Thank you for all the volunteers that make all that work. New business, 5B, presentation adoption of the budget. Okay, we're ahead of ourselves, we're done with that. So now we're coming to the interesting part, nominations from the floor and election of the council. On that point, we only have one pre-identified candidate, Neil Schneider, and 2 other vacancies. This is where the final arm twisting comes in. We definitely need you. Anna, you want to do some arm twisting?
No, I don't intend to twist any arms, but I will speak to this. So we have, by our bylaws and constitution, we kind of have how our council should be set up, how many terms will be served, and what the length of those terms is. And basically by those regulations, we've got 3 people going off who have served 2 terms of 2 years each. And they've served wonderfully, one of which stands next to me right now. So the first thing I want to do is just thank the council members who have served for the past 4 years for their great service. Can we thank them all? And in my experience in church, my experience here has been shorter, and so I have to go back to previous experience. I've often noticed that when you ask people to serve on something, you have trouble getting things. One of the things that's usually said is, come on, it's not that hard, it's just one meeting. So I'm not going to say that, because that minimizes what's actually going on. There's a meeting every month that you attend. There are 6 total council members, and 3 of them have an official position within the council. The way that we're doing it is we are, as a congregation, electing our council people, 6 of them, whoever they will be. And as a council, we'll decide who's going to serve as president, vice president, secretary. So what we need right now is just, we need to fill those other 2 slots. If we don't fill them today, move on with 4, I suppose. Or we get resolutions to throw out some of the bylaws and stuff, so some of the people who have served already are going to be available to continue to serve. Because once you're off, you can't come back for, what is it, 2 years? 2 years, yeah. So there's a couple things that might be happening here. One is we might be paralyzed by protocol. Another is, maybe it's just time to say, you know what, all right, I'll bite the bullet and I'll step and I'll help. I'll be part of that meeting. We can adjust things and duties and things like that as needed. But I'd like to see from this congregation, I'd like to see at least 2 more people to vote on. Is there anybody here who got them working on their heart and says, I'll be willing to sit on it?
I'll be willing to serve at this point.
All right, very good. Thank you. And Jared also. All right. There we go. I didn't feel like I twisted. All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
So in my case, hesitation is I know I'm gonna be gone chunks of time. I know I have to miss council meetings. I think that means I would not be able to serve.
That is probably more true 20 years ago than it is today, because this guy's missed a whole bunch of them and we just pipe them in over Zoom. And that's, and so if you can't be available over Zoom, it's we all have those times we can't make it, so on and so forth. But you make a good point. So at this point, we've got Jared and Clyde, right? And Neil. Is there anybody else who wants to throw their name in the pot and make us have to actually vote for this thing? Okay. For those of you who are like, oh, I almost raised my hand, well, that's okay. You can still sign up to be on our long-range planning committee. We got plenty of places to serve. All right? And so for that committee, I'll be at lunch, and you just come see me. I'll write your name up and contact information, and we'll start getting that team going as well. So do we have what we need there, Kevin?
We have what we need, and the only thing I'll add to that is, again, if you're new to council, some people have served in the past, they know what they're getting into. If you haven't done it before, there's plenty of people to guide you. If you're going to be a treasurer, the past treasurer is always there to assist you. We're fortunate we have Jackie serving as our bookkeeper, so that goes well. President, for my position, not going away, I'm still around, all the temples will be available, I'll most certainly help you in every way possible moving forward. And the council is like that as a whole, just a very loving, giving, and caring group, so don't be shy, we'll get through it. It's something you know, you'll learn it. We have a lot of old hands here that have done this before and are more than happy to guide you going forward. So with that said, we have 3 candidates. And if we're closing that out, I guess the vote is straightforward. All in favor of the slate as presented, Neil Slider, Jared, and Clyde. And I guess we're good to go. Installation of newly elected council will be held on the February 4th service. And I forget what the first meeting is. It's, I think, two weeks after that, so.
It's
18, yeah. So I'll work on putting that initial budget to get, initial agenda together and work with everyone as we establish our council positions during that first meeting on the 18th. So anyway, thank you for everyone that's been a part of this in the past and plan to be a part of this in the future. Kind of take this moment and reflect on these past 4 years myself. This is my last meeting, major meeting as outgoing council president. I just want to thank you all for weathering this very challenging time that we've gone through. Remember when 4 years ago we were fixing to retire Pastor Sherd, and our greatest concern in the world was doing a proper retirement party and doing the call committee for the first time in 25 years or better. That was our greatest concern in the world. Who would imagine everything we've gone through since then? Talk about perfect timing. Pastor retiring a month just prior to COVID hitting, and seeing what that did to our churches as a whole. Yeah, this time was just exquisite. But we stepped up. When the ELCA said no more worship, guess what happened? We were worshiping out in that church on that week. So it was amazing to see the spirit and faith of this church as we got together and continued to worship. On the outside, it wasn't easy all the time. We were so pleased when we got going to air conditioning, now fellowship hall again, and again when we were actually able to return to the sanctuary. But talk about challenges that this congregation stood up to, and we're successful on it. Remember our transition from the ELCA, how they continued to drift. Had some issues a decade or so ago that we weren't happy with. They continued down the path that seemed further and further from the biblical understanding and teaching. And just thank you for the many meetings, discussions, very thoughtful, very civil. It could have been very difficult, more difficult than it was. But again, accolades to those involved in that helped us get through that very difficult time and ultimately move us toward the LCMC organizational structure. I also want to kind of remember some of the hands that helped us make it through that difficult period. Remember Pastor Anna Gordy? She was there during the outdoor times. Brought some special music to that and things like that. Gary Bursch, much beloved, He carried us through after that for a considerable period of time. Probably would have been our pastor if I for the fact that we left the USDA. Stan Semanek came after that, with his own unique approach to things. That prop up the scrappy little church, if you remember the book, and we were reading and kind of turned us toward a more external look, preparation for the future and the survival of this organization and this congregation to continue to serve. And again, thanks everybody else too that participated in that time, and all those with their special skills, council members, past and present. And all these things are amazed by this congregation's resilience, strength, and grace in these very challenging times. So here we are in 2024, not being successful, ready to take the torch forward toward your leadership, looking more externally. That's one thing we're proud of. We're so good at looking internally. Looking externally hopefully will be something that both pastors and future councils will be able to put some emphasis on. So anyway, thank you, and God bless you all. And with that, we'll join with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Time is 11:55, meeting adjourned. Let's go eat.
Confirmation students, meet me over there, get your lunch, and let's all sit together.